Millions of garden beds across America are biologically dead. More fertilizer every season, less food every harvest. The diagnosis never changes. Dead soil. The prescription never changes either. Buy another bag. Meanwhile, ordinary rice, the cheapest staple on the planet, can be used in 7 different forms to permanently rebuild the earthworm populations and microbial systems that make soil alive. A 2014 meta-analysis published in Scientific Reports confirmed that earthworms increase crop yields by 25%. The effects were strongest when organic residues were present. Rice is the most effective organic residue you can provide, and it costs pennies. The knowledge was never patented. It was simply never profitable to teach. Until now, here are the 7 tricks with rice that bring dead soil back to life. Trick 1. Cooked rice. The fast-action worm magnet, a handful of plain cooked rice placed on the soil surface or buried 1 inch below it, triggers a biological chain reaction that no synthetic product can replicate. Within 24 to 48 hours, the gelatinized starches in cooked rice begin to break down. Bacteria arrive first, colonizing the grain surfaces and consuming the simple sugars released during decomposition. Fungi follow within days, threading their hyphae through the softening grains and extending their networks outward into the surrounding soil. That concentrated microbial bloom is precisely what earthworms detect and migrate toward. The mechanism is chemical, not random. Earthworms do not wander blindly through the soil hoping to encounter food. They follow volatile chemical gradients, scent trails released by decomposing organic matter and the bacterial colonies feeding on it. When you place cooked rice in your garden bed, the microbial bloom that forms within the first 48 hours sends a chemical signal outward through the soil in every direction. Earthworms within a radius of 3 to 4 feet detect that signal and begin moving toward the source. Multiple university extension programs confirm that cooked rice is an excellent food source for composting worms and for soil ecosystems. Cornell Cooperative Extension, UConn Soil Testing Laboratory, Ohio State University, Utah State University, and Purdue University Extension. Vermicomposting guides all list plain cooked rice and other grains among the top-tier organic inputs for worm systems. The consensus is the same across every guide. Plain cooked rice without oil, salt, or seasoning is one of the fastest decomposing organic inputs available, and it jumpstarts microbial activity within hours. The application is simple. Scatter 2 to 3 tablespoons of plain cooked rice per square foot across your garden bed. Press it lightly into the surface and cover with a thin layer of mulch to retain moisture and prevent drying. Repeat once every 2 to 3 weeks during the growing season. Within a month, earthworm casting density in treated beds will be visibly higher than in untreated beds. The moderation warning is science-backed. Too much starchy material applied at once can temporarily create anaerobic conditions as microbial oxygen consumption spikes. Small, frequent applications outperform large, single dumps every time. Feed the system steadily, not all at once. The cost is effectively zero, and the biological return compounds with every application. Trick 2. Crushed uncooked rice. The slow-release underground feeder. Cooked rice works fast because the starches are already gelatinized and immediately accessible to microbes. Crushed uncooked rice operates on a different timeline. The raw starch granules are locked inside the intact grain structure and break down more slowly, providing a sustained food source for microbial populations over weeks rather than days. The effect is a longer, steadier biological signal that keeps earthworms active in the treated zone across an entire growing period, rather than a short burst that fades after 2 weeks. The broader principle, confirmed across multiple papers in soil biology and biochemistry and applied soil ecology, is that labile carbon sources, starches, sugars, and simple carbohydrates are the single most effective driver of earthworm reproduction and biomass gain when mixed into compost or soil. Raw rice is one of the cheapest, most shelf-stable labile carbon sources available to any gardener. A 5-pound bag costs under $3 at any grocery store and provides enough material for an entire season of applications across a large garden. Crush dry rice lightly with a rolling pin or pulse it briefly in a blender. You are not making flour. You are cracking the grain open to expose the starch interior to soil moisture and microbial access. The grain fragments absorb moisture from the surrounding soil, swell, and begin releasing starch over 2 to 4 weeks. Microbial populations build steadily around each fragment, and earthworms follow the gradient. Scatter crushed rice at 1 to 2 tablespoons per square foot, and work it lightly into the top 2 inches of soil. Cover with mulch. For maximum effect, alternate between cooked rice applications every 2 weeks and crushed raw rice applications once a month. The cooked rice provides the fast microbial spike. The crushed raw rice provides the sustained baseline. Together, they create a continuous feeding cycle that keeps earthworm populations elevated across the entire season, rather than spiking and crashing with each individual application. Trick 3. Fermented rice water. The liquid microbial accelerator. This trick carries the strongest direct scientific backing of any on the list, and it connects rice to soil biology through published, peer-reviewed field trials rather than extension guidance alone. When you rinse uncooked rice before cooking, the cloudy water that washes off contains dissolved starches, amino acids, B vitamins, phosphorus, potassium, and a suite of micronutrients leached from the grain surface. That water, when fermented at room temperature for 3 to 5 days, becomes a concentrated liquid microbial inoculant that can be applied directly to dead garden soil. A 2021 study by Nabayi and colleagues, published in the journal Sustainability, documented the fermentation process in detail and confirmed that allowing washed rice water to sit at room temperature for 3 days dramatically increases concentrations of beneficial bacteria, including nitrogen-fixing bacteria, and phosphorus and potassium solubilizing organisms. The fermented product contained measurably higher levels of available nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium than the raw rinse water, and delivered those nutrients alongside a living microbial population rather than in isolated chemical form. A 2023 study by the same research group, published in Heirloom and indexed through PMC, tested fermented rice water across 3 consecutive field planting cycles. The results were remarkable. Fermented rice water significantly increased beneficial soil bacterial populations in every treated plot. Plant growth improved measurably. Nutrient uptake increased. Soil bacterial diversity rose across every treated bed compared to untreated controls. The study confirmed that fermented rice water functions as both a microbial inoculant and a nutrient supplement simultaneously. The preparation costs nothing. Rinse 1 cup of uncooked rice in 2 cups of water. Save the cloudy rinse water in a jar or bottle. Cover loosely to allow gas exchange and leave at room temperature for 3 to 5 days. The liquid will develop a slightly sour smell, which indicates active lactic acid fermentation. Dilute the fermented rice water 1-to-1 with fresh water and apply directly to the soil around your plants once per week. You are not feeding the plant. You are repopulating the rhizosphere. The microbial community you introduce through fermented rice water feeds earthworms, suppresses pathogenic organisms through competitive exclusion, and makes locked nutrients available to roots through biological solubilization. Within 2 to 3 weeks of weekly application, biologically dead soil shows visible signs of recovery, darker color, increased earthworm activity, and new root growth at the surface. Trick 4. Rice in the worm bin and compost pile. The population multiplier. The first 3 tricks work in the garden bed. The 4th trick works in the systems that feed your garden, your worm bin, and your compost pile, and it amplifies the output of both. Earthworms, in a controlled bin environment, respond to rice-based inputs with measurable increases in reproduction rate, biomass, and casting production. Every university extension vermicomposting guide that lists approved feedstocks includes cooked rice and cooked grains among the top-tier food sources for composting worms. The reason is the same mechanism that operates in the garden bed. Rice generates a dense microbial bloom that worms consume voraciously, and the speed of that bloom translates directly into faster worm feeding, faster reproduction, and higher casting output. In your worm bin, add small amounts of cooked rice, 2 to 3 tablespoons per feeding, mixed in with your regular kitchen scraps and bedding material. The rice accelerates microbial colonization of the entire bin contents, which increases worm feeding speed and casting production across the full volume. Do not add large quantities at once. The same anaerobic warning applies in the bin as in the garden. Small, frequent additions outperform large dumps. In your outdoor compost pile, scatter a thin layer of crushed raw rice or leftover cooked rice between your green and brown layers. The starch accelerates decomposition of the surrounding material by feeding the bacterial populations that break down cellulose and lignin in leaves, straw, and woody material. Compost piles supplemented with rice-based inputs reach finished temperatures faster and produce a biologically denser end product than unsupplemented piles. The output of both systems, worm castings and finished compost, goes back into the garden beds, where it continues feeding the earthworm populations you are building with tricks 1 through 3. The system is circular. Rice feeds microbes. Microbes feed worms. Worms produce casting. Castings build soil. Soil grows food. Kitchen scraps return to the worm bin. The cycle requires no external purchase to sustain. Trick 5. Rice bran. The upgraded microbial powerhouse. Rice bran is the outer layer of the rice grain removed during milling. It contains the highest concentration of oils, proteins, B vitamins, and minerals of any part of the grain. When white rice is produced, the bran is stripped away and typically sold as animal feed or discarded. For soil biology, rice bran is the most concentrated microbial food source in the entire rice toolkit. A 2016 study by Pour Zamani and colleagues, published in the International Journal of Environmental Health Engineering, tested rice bran as feedstock for vermicomposting earthworm systems. The study documented that rice bran combined with food waste produced high-quality vermicompost with rapid stabilization and significant nutrient enrichment. The earthworms processed the rice bran substrate efficiently, and the resulting castings showed elevated nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium levels compared to controls without bran supplementation. The advantage of rice bran over whole rice is concentration. Bran delivers more microbial food per gram than cooked or crushed rice, because the oils and proteins in the bran layer support a broader spectrum of microbial species, including fungi that thrive on lipid-rich substrates. The fungal component matters because mycorrhizal and saprophytic fungi are responsible for building the long-term soil structure, the hyphal networks and glomalin proteins that create stable aggregates and lasting fertility. Rice bran is available at most health food stores, Asian grocery stores, and online retailers for $2 to $4 per pound. A single pound provides enough material for months of application across a home garden. Scatter 1 to 2 tablespoons per square foot across garden beds and work it lightly into the top inch of soil. Cover with mulch. The bran absorbs moisture rapidly, swells, and becomes a microbial colonization site within 24 hours. Earthworm activity in bran-treated zones increases visibly within 2 weeks. For worm bin use, mix rice bran into the bedding material at a ratio of roughly 1 part bran to 10 parts bedding. The bran accelerates bin processing speed and produces castings with measurably higher nutrient concentrations than bins fed without bran supplementation. Trick 6. Rice straw. The generational soil builder. Rice straw is the stem and leaf material left after the grain is harvested. In industrial agriculture, rice straw is typically burned, a practice that destroys the carbon and returns nothing to the soil. In traditional Asian farming systems, rice straw was always returned to the field, either incorporated directly into the soil or composted and applied as mulch. The difference in long-term soil health between the two approaches is now documented at the molecular level. A 2020 study by Song and colleagues, published in Peer J as a fully open access paper, tested the interaction between earthworms and rice straw in controlled mesocosm experiments. The results were decisive. Earthworms completely consumed rice straw residues within 4 weeks in treated mesocosms, while identical straw in worm-free controls remained largely intact after 18 weeks. The earthworms converted the rice straw carbon into soil organic carbon, increasing the total carbon content of the treated soil while simultaneously boosting enzyme activity across multiple nutrient cycling pathways. The worms did not just eat the straw, they transformed it into permanent soil fertility. The mechanism is the carbon-to-nitrogen ratio. Rice straw has a high carbon-to-nitrogen ratio, typically around 60 to 80 to 1. Applied directly to garden soil without earthworm activity, that high-carbon material would temporarily immobilize nitrogen as microbes consume available nitrogen to break down the excess carbon. But when earthworms are present, they accelerate decomposition so dramatically that the nitrogen immobilization phase is shortened from months to weeks, and the resulting castings deliver a balanced carbon-to-nitrogen ratio that feeds plants immediately. For home gardeners, sourcing is straightforward. Rice straw is available at farm supply stores, garden centers that carry straw mulch, and online. It is inexpensive, typically $5 to $10 per bale, and a single bale provides enough material for a full season of mulching and soil building across a large garden. Apply rice straw as a 3 to 4 inch mulch layer across all garden beds. As the bottom layer contacts the soil and absorbs moisture, earthworms pull fragments downward into the profile. Fungi colonize the straw fibers and extend their networks into the soil matrix. Over 2 to 3 seasons of continuous straw mulching, the top several inches of even severely depleted soil will darken, loosen, and develop the crumbly tilth that indicates active biological processing. The straw is not a seasonal cover. It is a generational soil-building investment. Each layer consumed by biology becomes the foundation for the next. Trick 7. Fermented rice and milk. The hidden microbial secret. This is the most powerful trick on the list, and the one with the deepest roots in traditional farming practice. It produces a concentrated liquid culture of lactic acid bacteria that functions as a biological soil inoculant capable of reviving microbially dead ground within weeks of consistent application. The University of Hawaii College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources published the definitive extension guide on this method, designated SA8, documenting the exact procedure for culturing lactic acid bacteria from rice rinse water and milk. The method comes directly from Korean natural farming, a system practiced continuously across Asia and the Pacific for over 40 years. Stage 1. Rinse 1 cup of uncooked rice in 2 cups of clean water. Agitate until the water turns cloudy. Strain the rice out and save the cloudy water in a glass jar, filled roughly 2/3 full. Cover with a breathable cloth secured with a rubber band. Leave at room temperature, out of direct sunlight, for 3 to 5 days. The starches feed naturally occurring lactic acid bacteria present in the air and on the rice grain surface. The liquid will develop a mildly sour, fermented smell. This is your starter culture. Stage 2. Add the fermented rice water to fresh, whole milk at a ratio of 1 part rice water to 10 parts milk. Cover loosely. Leave at room temperature for 5 to 7 days. The milk will separate into a solid white curd floating on top and a clear to yellowish liquid below. That liquid, the whey, is your finished product. A concentrated lactic acid bacteria serum at populations dense enough to function as a biological soil drench. Strain off the curd for your compost pile. Store the whey in a sealed jar in the refrigerator, where it remains viable for several months. Dilute 1 to 20 with clean water before application. Apply 1 to 2 cups of diluted serum per square foot of garden bed, once per week for the first 4 weeks, then every 2 weeks for maintenance. The lactic acid bacteria perform 3 documented functions in soil. They accelerate decomposition of organic matter by producing enzymes that break down cellulose and lignin. They suppress soil-borne pathogens including Fusarium, Pythium, and Rhizoctonia through competitive exclusion and acid production. And they stimulate earthworm activity by creating the dense bacterial food web that earthworms consume. The CT-TAR publication confirmed Lactobacillus as the dominant genus in the finished serum alongside populations of Bacillus and other beneficial soil bacteria. This trick is the capstone of the entire system. Tricks 1 through 6 feed the biology. Trick 7 inoculates the biology. Applied to soil that is receiving cooked rice, crushed rice, fermented water, bran, and straw, the LAB serum accelerates every other process on this list by multiplying the microbial population that makes all of them work. The 7 tricks are not independent. They are an interdependent system. Each one makes the others more effective. But it survived. The knowledge of rice as a complete soil revival system never disappeared into agricultural industry archives or product development pipelines. While the synthetic fertilizer machine was consolidating into a multi-hundred-billion-dollar global industry, traditional rice farming communities across Asia preserved every element of this system through millennia of continuous practice. Japanese natural farming traditions, preserved through the 20th century by practitioners like Masanobu Fukuoka, incorporated fermented rice preparations, straw mulching, and bran composting as standard soil treatments decades before Western soil science published its first peer-reviewed paper on the mechanisms. Korean natural farming systems codified the rice water and milk. LAB serum as a core practice and trained thousands of farmers across Hawaii, the Philippines, Thailand, and Latin America through direct mentorship networks that bypassed the commercial fertilizer supply chain entirely. Chinese paddy farmers returned rice straw and bran to their fields for thousands of years, maintaining earthworm populations and soil carbon levels that modern industrial rice systems have never matched. Western science caught up. Van Groningen's 2014 meta-analysis confirmed the 25% yield increase from earthworm presence when organic residues are available. Nabai's 2021 and 2023 field studies confirmed fermented rice water as a measurable microbial inoculant and plant growth enhancer. Zamani's 2016 study confirmed rice bran as a superior vermicomposting feedstock. Song's 2020 study confirmed earthworms convert rice straw into permanent soil carbon within weeks. The University of Hawaii published the LAB serum method with step-by-step instructions and identified bacterial species. Every mechanism that traditional farmers practiced intuitively has now been confirmed at the molecular level by peer-reviewed research. Today, the knowledge is accelerating in home gardens worldwide. Not because the industry promoted it, because gardeners who watched their soil biology collapse despite years of synthetic inputs started asking why a handful of rice, a cup of milk, and a bale of straw could rebuild what hundreds of dollars of commercial products never touched. The silence around rice as a soil revival system is breaking. You can revive what they declared dead. Start with what you have. If you cook rice tonight, save the rinse water and ferment it for 3 days. If you have leftover cooked rice tomorrow morning, scatter it across your garden bed and cover it with mulch. If you run a worm bin, add a tablespoon of cooked rice at your next feeding. If you can source rice bran, work it into the top inch of your beds this weekend. If you can find rice straw, lay it as mulch across every square inch of exposed soil. And when you are ready for the most powerful tool in the system, brew the lab serum from rice water and milk and apply it weekly until your soil darkens, loosens, and fills with life. The total investment for all 7 rice tricks applied across a full growing season runs under $10. That is less than the cost of a single bag of synthetic fertilizer at any garden center. And these tricks do not stop working when the bag is empty. Each application feeds the microbial community that feeds the earthworms, that produce the castings, that build the soil that grows the food. The cycle is self-reinforcing. The cost approaches zero. The biology compounds year after year. The agrochemical industry profits from the assumption that soil fertility must be manufactured in factories, packaged in bags, and purchased every season. These 7 rice tricks begin with the opposite truth, that the cheapest grain on earth can permanently activate the most powerful biological workforce in your garden, and the worms will do the rest for free. The knowledge was never lost. It was waiting in the rice paddy, in the rinse water, in the bran pile, in the straw field, in the milk jug, in the hands of farmers who never needed a single synthetic input to grow food in living soil. If this seed was finally freed for you, subscribe to Hank's Gardening Journey and hit the bell. Every like and every share helps break the silence. The next seed breaks free soon.